Hi, I'm Victor, 28, and the night my fiancé took another man's number right in front of me was the night my life split in two before and after Camila. We'd been together 4 years, lived together 3, and in the last few months, everything between us had started to rot. I just didn't want to admit it. So when she said, "Let's go out Friday, babe, new bar downtown," I said yes, even though every cell in my body said no. The place was loud and slick, with neon lights bouncing off glass walls. Camila looked like she was dressed for attention, not for me. Short black dress, red lipstick, that look that always turned heads. I told myself it didn't matter. I was there for us. But us didn't exist anymore. Halfway through our second drink, I noticed her staring at the bartender. Some guy named Leo, all jawline and tattoos. Every time he passed, she laughed too loud, leaned too far, smiled too long. I tried to swallow the jealousy, but when she reached for her phone and said, "Hey, can I get your number? You seem fun," my stomach dropped. "Camille, what are you doing?" I asked, calm but burning. She didn't even look at me, just smiled at Leo and said, "You're not my husband or my owner, Victor." That was it. Something snapped. I didn't yell, didn't beg. I just nodded, stood up, and said, "Enjoy your night." She didn't stop me. I walked out into the cold, the bass from the club still thumping behind me. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't anger, it was clarity. I was done. When I got home, I called Max, my best friend since college, the kind of guy who helps you move bodies or furniture, depending on the situation. I told him everything. The bar, the bartender, the humiliation. "Vic," he said, "she's been using you for months. You know that, right? Time to end it for real." I looked around the apartment I'd paid for, our apartment. My TV, my sofa, my coffee machine. Everything but the guilt was mine. I took a deep breath and said, "Let's do it." Max showed up an hour later with a borrowed truck and a grin that could start a fire. "We're taking back what's yours," he said. And that night, we did by 2 a.m. The apartment looked like the aftermath of a quiet robbery, only this time the thief was the rightful owner. Max and I worked fast. The leather sofa I bought with my first work bonus gone. The 55-inch TV in the truck. My coffee maker, my holy grail, was carefully wrapped in towels like a newborn. Every time we carried something out, I felt a weight lift off my chest. "Man," Max said, wiping sweat off his forehead, "you sure you don't want to grab her designer mirror too? It's technically yours. Remember that gift card you paid with?" I laughed for the first time that night. "Now, let her keep one thing to look at herself." When we were done, the apartment felt hollow. There was her old table, a couple of wobbly chairs, her bed, and silence. Perfect silence. On the kitchen counter, I left a single piece of paper. No signature. Just 5 words written in pen: "You don't own my salary." I walked out without looking back. Before dawn, I'd already called the utility companies. The electricity, water, and internet, everything was now under Camilla's name. I changed the passwords on Netflix, HBO, everything I paid for. Then I transferred all the screenshots and payment proofs into a folder labeled "just in case." By sunrise, I was sitting in Max's small living room, drinking a beer while he grinned like he'd just watched a heist movie. "Victor," he said, raising the bottle, "you didn't just leave, you reset." For the first time in months, I smiled without forcing it. But the peace didn't last long. The next morning, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Messages. Dozens of them. First, "Victor, where are you? What happened?" Then, "Are you serious? You can't just leave me." Followed by, "Well, you're pathetic." And finally, "Please, let's talk. I don't want us to end like this." I stared at the screen, coffee in hand, reading every word without replying. Max, chewing a piece of toast beside me, leaned over and said, "Pure theater, man. Don't take the bait." He was right. Camila always knew how to twist a story. That afternoon, she posted on Instagram a photo of the empty apartment with the caption, "When you're abandoned without warning." Within an hour, mutual friends started texting, "What did you do, Victor? She says you took everything. Is it true you left her with nothing?" I showed the messages to Max. He burst out laughing. "You're officially the villain, bro. Congratulations." But I wasn't nervous. I'd been expecting it. I had all the receipts, literally. Rent, bills, transfers, Even her texts admitting she was short again this month. Camila could play victim online. I had the truth offline. And that's when I decided this wasn't just about leaving her. It was about making her finally face the cost of everything she took. By the end of that week, Camila had turned our breakup into her personal drama series. Her Instagram stories were non-stop sad quotes, black and white selfies, captions like "Sometimes love hurts the most when it's real." It was so dramatic it almost deserved background music. But behind the curtain, she was spiraling. Mutual friends told me she'd been calling everyone, saying I'd abandoned her, that she was struggling to survive. Max wasn't having it. One night, he texted our friend group on WhatsApp and laid out the truth. He didn't hold back. Camila flirted with a bartender in front of Victor. He paid for everything. She owes him over 20 grand. Don't buy the sob story. He attached screenshots, rent receipts, transfer messages, proof that her part-time job couldn't even cover her nails, let alone her half of the bills. The group exploded. Some friends were shocked. Others said they'd suspected it. But not everyone was on my side. Sophia, a friend who loved playing mediator, texted me privately, leaving her like that wasn't right. "Vic, you could have at least talked to her." Talked. I'd been talking for months while she took and took. I just didn't reply. The next morning, Camila posted another masterpiece, a photo of herself staring out the apartment window with the caption, "Sometimes the ones who love you the most are the ones who destroy you." The comments poured in, "You deserve better. Cami, he sounds like a narcissist. Stay strong, queen." It stung, I won't lie. Reading strangers label me the villain while I was the one footing her bills. It burned, but I kept my cool. Max, however, was furious. "You can't let her rewrite the story," he said. "You've got evidence. You could bury her." I didn't want revenge. I just wanted distance. But fate had other plans. A few days later, Diego, a mutual friend, sent me screenshots of a chat between him and Camila. She'd tried to convince him I'd left her with nothing and took all her belongings. Diego asked one question: "Why didn't you ever pay your part of the rent?" Her reply: "It's not that simple." Then silence. Diego sent me the screenshots with a single message: "She's digging her own grave, man." That night, over beers, Max leaned back and said, "You gotta close this clean. She's not going to stop until you make her." And he was right. I didn't want a social media war, I wanted consequences. So I started documenting everything, every transfer, every bill, every time she'd texted, "Can you cover this month for me?" When I added it all up, the total came to $22,000. That was more than just money. That was the price of my silence, my patience, and my stupidity. It was time Camila paid it back one way or another. Hi, I'm Victor, 28, and yes, I brought the promissory note to our breakup like it was a receipt for emotional damage. After the numbers hit me, $22,000, I did something stupidly grown up. I turned my anger into paperwork. Max's lawyer buddy drafted a simple promissory note. No theatrics, just facts, amounts, dates, and acknowledgement that Camila owed me money for rent, utilities, and debts I'd covered. I printed 3 copies, slid one into a folder with the receipts, and felt oddly calm. Paper has a way of making chaos look manageable. The coffee shop we picked was the kind with 2 bright plants and baristas who act like philosophy students. Camila was late, which I didn't mind. When she finally arrived, she wasn't the perfected, filtered Camila I'd seen on Instagram. She looked raw: ponytail, no makeup, jeans that sagged at the knee like they'd given up. For a second I almost felt something like pity. Then I remembered the bartender and the texts and the nights she called me babe while swiping left on our life. She started talking before the waiter disappeared with our cups. "V, I'm in a hole. I can't." Her voice broke on the last word. She didn't try the victim act I'd seen on stories. This was different, smaller, less performance, more panic. I put the promissory note on the table. "Here," I said. "This is what you owe. You sign, we make a plan. You don't sign, we do something else." I didn't threaten. I just laid out the truth like a lunch menu. Her fingers trembled when she picked it up. For a second she actually looked like a person who'd been into deep, not an Instagram storyline. Then, somehow, she found the pen and signed. Not because she suddenly had the money, she didn't, but because a signature buys you time and a story buys you sympathy. She asked for leniency. I offered a number, $50 a month. Ridiculous, symbolic, and perfect. A monthly reminder that nothing disappears just because you ignore it. Before I left, I slid another thing across the table, the receipt from the ring I'd sold. No dramatic reveal, no flourish, just the paper. I sold the ring, I said. $72. Spent it in Tokyo. You should go somewhere once, Camila. It clears the fog. She looked at the receipt like I'd handed her a foreign language. No outrage, no begging, just dull acceptance. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like closing paperwork on a lease for a life I'd outgrown. I paid for the coffee, left the folder on the table, and walked away with a new kind of quiet in my chest. After that meeting, the noise shifted. Camila posted less. Her stories were quieter, a plant here, a filtered coffee there, but the drama faded because the narrative no longer fed her. A $50 deposit pinged my account a few weeks later. I moved it to a separate folder I called Reminders, and it became oddly comforting. Not because of the money, I could breathe without it, but because it was proof the paper had teeth. I didn't go scorched earth. I wasn't trying to ruin her. The lawyer told me a suit would cost more time and energy than a guy like me wanted to spend. I wanted my life back, not a legal crusade. So I kept the receipts, the screenshots, and the signed note. I saved evidence like someone saving photographs from a flood. My intention was simple: accountability, not annihilation. Meanwhile, I started rebuilding from the small things. I found a tiny apartment with a creaky floor and cheap blinds that made the evenings look cinematic. I slept like I'd finally turned the page. I bought a plant which, shockingly, is still alive, running the posters I actually liked, and put my programming books back on a shelf that didn't wobble. Each small purchase felt like a stitch in something I could call mine. Max made jokes to keep me from overthinking. At least you can say you sold an engagement ring and traveled to Japan, he'd say, half laughing. And he was right. Japan became the ridiculous, glorious punctuation mark on that chapter. Ramen at 2 a.m., neon shrines, the kind of solitude that teaches you how to be with yourself. When I came back, my emails were full of bug reports and code merges and the comforting little tyranny of deadlines. Work grounded me in a way therapy sometimes couldn't. I started locking things down literally and figuratively. Passwords I'd shared were changed. Bills were cleared. I learned to make coffee the way I liked it, which, surprisingly, was an act of rebellion. I stopped giving in to people who asked me to carry more than I could. If that sounds melodramatic, it's fair, but it's also true. And then life, stubbornly mundane, started to reappear in color. I went on a few bad dates, the kind where someone brags about CrossFit between bites of salad, stalked a plant forum, and coded until my eyes blurred. I practiced saying no without apologizing. It felt foreign and necessary. Camila faded into the background of my life the way a loud song does when you stop playing it. I didn't celebrate her falling apart. I simply continued collecting evidence that I could be whole on my own terms. 3 months later, I had just started feeling normal again, or whatever passes for normal after detonating your engagement, when life, as usual, decided to test my resolve. It was a Tuesday morning. I was in the middle of a Zoom call, half listening to a teammate argue about API documentation, when a message popped up on my phone from an unknown number. "Victor, it's Camila. Please, I need to see you. It's important." My stomach tightened. I stared at the text for a full minute, trying to convince myself not to care. I had blocked her before, so this was a new number. That alone told me she was desperate. I showed it to Max later at lunch. He snorted so hard he almost choked on his sandwich. "Bro, don't even think about it. She's setting up Act 2 of her soap opera." He wasn't wrong, but I needed closure, or maybe I just wanted to see what losing her lies had done to her. So I texted back, "For what?" Her reply came instantly. "I'm in trouble. Please, just one talk." "I'm begging you," I agreed, "but on my terms." Public place. Broad daylight. "No, we just need to talk." Ambush in my new apartment. I picked a coffee shop 2 blocks from work, neutral ground, loud enough to keep emotions from boiling over. When I walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. The polished, Instagram perfect Camila was gone. Her hair was tied up messily, her eyeliner smudged, her nails chipped. Her face looked tired. "Thanks for coming," she said quietly, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I sat down but didn't say a word. I just watched her fidget with her cup, like she was waiting for a judge to read her sentence. Finally, she spoke. I'm drowning, Victor. The bills, the rent, the loan I took to pay them, it's all too much. I owe 25 grand. I thought I could handle it, but she trailed off, looking at me like maybe sympathy could resurrect the version of me who used to save her. But that guy was gone. Camila, I said evenly, you made this bed. You never paid your part. You flirted in front of me. You lied. You treated me like a credit card with a pulse. What did you think was going to happen? Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't move. For once, I wasn't the one trying to fix her. It's not fair, she said finally. We were supposed to support each other. I almost laughed. Support is mutual. You took, I covered. That's not support, that's a subscription. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out the folder, and placed the promissory note on the table. Here's what you owe me. 22,000. I'm not suing you. I'm not ruining you. I just want you to acknowledge it. She stared at it, silent. Then, without arguing, she signed. Her hand trembled the whole time. When she finished, she whispered, I don't have a way to pay. 50 a month, I said. That's what I expect. Not for the money, for the memory. Before I left, I showed her the receipt for the ring I'd sold. $72, I said. I spent it in Japan. You should go someday, it teaches you how small your problems are. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She just nodded slowly, eyes empty. I left her sitting there with her coffee, the signed paper between us like a gravestone. When I told Max, he laughed so hard he cried. $50 a month. You legend. That's the perfect revenge, a slow, polite, and fully documented. But I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. That night, I walked into my little apartment, turned on my coffee machine, and for the first time in a year, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. After that coffee shop meeting, everything went eerily still. No late-night calls. No guilt trips disguised as apologies. Just quiet. The kind of silence you only get when a storm finally runs out of energy. The first $50 transfer from Camille arrived 2 weeks later. Description line, payment 1 440th. Max nearly fell off his chair laughing. You know she's gonna be 65 before she's done paying you, he said between bites of pizza. I didn't care about the timeline. It wasn't about the money. Each month she sent that transfer, she was forced to confront the version of me she'd underestimated, the one who didn't cave, didn't beg, didn't buy her excuses anymore. I moved into my new apartment soon after. It was small, 1-bedroom with squeaky floors and a view of the neighbor's laundry, but it was mine. The walls smelled faintly of paint and possibility. I put my coffee maker on the counter like a trophy. The first morning there, sunlight hit the window just right. I brewed my coffee, played some Miles Davis, and realized something embarrassingly simple. I felt peace. No tension. No constant buzzing phone. No walking on eggshells waiting for a mood swing. Over the next few weeks, I rebuilt the boring parts of my life, the ones Camila had quietly disassembled. I updated my portfolio, started running again. Bought groceries without worrying if someone would mock my boring diet. I hung my programming certificates on the wall next to a framed photo from Tokyo. Max dropped by one night, looked around, and said, "Man, this place actually looks like you now. You've got your life back." And he was right. But peace, I learned, has a way of making people curious. 3 months later, Laura, a mutual friend who'd always meant well, called me. "Hey, don't freak out," she said in that tone that guaranteed I would. "Camila moved out of your old apartment. Couldn't afford it anymore." "Okay," I said, cautious. "She's staying with a friend, trying to do social media full-time. But it's not going well." I didn't respond. I didn't know what to feel. There was a time when that kind of news would have cracked something inside me. Now, it just landed like a dull thud. Laura hesitated before adding, "She told people you ruined her life." Of course she did. The victim costume still fit, even if the story didn't. That night, I checked her Instagram out of pure curiosity. The transformation was stunning. Gone were the polished captions and perfectly staged outfits. Her posts had dwindled to random coffee shots and recycled quotes about healing energy. The comments section, once filled with her loyal "you deserve better" fans, was now mostly tumbleweeds, I stared at one photo longer than I should of a picture of her sitting by a window, looking out at the city, the caption, learning to rebuild, and I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel satisfaction. I just felt nothing. That's when I realized healing isn't fireworks or revenge fantasies coming true. It's the quiet moment you look at someone who wants to find your pain and they simply don't anymore. I closed her profile, made myself another coffee, and sat on the couch listening to the hum of my fridge. Ordinary life had never sounded so good. Time, as it turns out, moves faster when nobody's draining you. 6 months after that last coffee with Camila, my life had rebuilt itself quietly like code compiling in the background. I'd settled into routines that made sense again: early runs, strong coffee, clean dishes, silence that didn't feel like punishment. Work was going well. I got a promotion, started leading a small development team. My boss called me a stabilizer, which was ironic, considering a year ago I was emotionally held together with caffeine and denial. Then there was Anna. We met at work, of course we did, because love seems to show up right when you've stopped scanning room S for it. She was a data analyst, funny in a dry, effortless way. She wore sneakers to meetings and somehow made sarcasm sound like kindness. The first time we went out, I insisted on paying. She frowned, crossed her arms, and said, "Why? You allergic to equality?" I laughed, but it hit me somewhere deep. That small insistence, that simple fairness, felt revolutionary. We didn't rush anything. We just existed, like two people with their own lives who happened to enjoy colliding. She never asked about Camila, and I never offered. Not because I was hiding it, but because that story no longer felt like mine to tell. It was something I'd survived, not something I lived in. Max met Anna a few weeks later at a small dinner I hosted in my apartment. After she left, he turned to me with that smug grin of his. "You've got color again," he said. "Before, you were all grayscale and receipts." I laughed. "Yeah, well, it's nice to not be a financial institution with feelings anymore." But just when I thought the past was fully behind me, an email showed up. Subject line, Ray payment. It was from CMILA. She wrote, "Hi Victor. I've been trying to keep up with the payments, but I just lost my job. I'll send what I can next month. I know I made mistakes, but I really am trying to change. I hope you're doing well." I read it twice. It wasn't manipulative. It wasn't performative. It sounded human. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to reply with anger or triumph. I just typed back, "Thanks for letting me know. Take care of yourself." No lecture. No emotion. Just closure, polite, final, quiet. When I hit send, something in me finally clicked into place. The anger, the exhaustion, the guilt, they'd all been keeping me tethered. Letting them go wasn't forgiveness. It was release. That night, Anna and I sat on the balcony with 2 beers, watching the city lights flicker. She asked me, "Do you ever think about the past?" "Sometimes," I said. "But mostly, I think about how much better the present feels." She smiled, leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time since the night in that bar, I felt absolutely, peacefully ennowned. It's strange how the ending of one story becomes the quiet beginning of another. A year after the breakup, I woke up in my apartment tower apartment. If you count the plant that somehow survived both winter and my neglect, and realized I didn't think about Camila anymore. Not in anger, not in longing. She had simply become background noise in a life playing new music. Her final payment came through that morning. $50. Labeled last one. I stared at it for a moment, then smiled. It wasn't about the money. It was the punctuation mark at the end of a sentence I'd been too afraid to finish. I texted Max a screenshot. "End of an era." He replied instantly, "Bro, frame that payment receipt." I didn't frame it. I deleted it. Because real closure isn't about keeping score, it's about not needing to. That weekend, Anna and I took a trip to the coast. It wasn't anything fancy, cheap motel, sand that stuck to everything, but it felt like wealth. She laughed easily, like she'd never learned how to weaponize words, and I realized that peace doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes with the sound of someone else's calm beside yours. On the drive back, she asked, "If you could go back, would you change anything?" I thought about it for a while. About that night at the bar, the humiliation, the moving truck, the note I left behind, "You don't own my salary." Finally, I said no. I'd still walk out. Maybe faster this time. She smiled, turned up the radio, and sang off-key all the way home. Now, when I look around my apartment at the TV, the coffee maker, the books, the life rebuilt from receipts, I see something Camila never could: proof that starting over isn't failure. It's repair. I'm not the same guy who sat quietly while someone else treated my loyalty like a discount code. I'm someone who learned that love isn't measured in rent money or patience, it's measured in balance. Sometimes I still think about that note I left on the counter. You don't own my salary. Back then, it was about money. Now, I think it meant something else. You don't own my peace. You don't own my time. You don't own me. And that, finally, was the real payment.